Okay, so what we're talking about today is change, how to kind of facilitate positive change. This is a big part of what OTs do. We just facilitate positive change in everything we do, really. That's what we're all about. So we're going to talk about like the evidence, the best ways of doing that, the most effective ways of helping getting your clients to change. And then we're going to apply this at first to ourselves to see kind of the challenges with that before we kind of get ready when you go into clinicals and all that and start doing it with real patients. Here's our questions for the day. The handouts, I'm going to ask you to pass the handouts in after today, and then then I'll redistribute them. Again, this is what OTs do. We're agents of change, agents of positive change. The more skilled you are at that, the better, the more effective you will be as a therapist. You can have all the greatest knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to get people to get buy-in and change, all your great ideas are just, for your patients, are just not going to work. Helping clients reach their goals through positive change is what OT is all about. You need to understand why some people's change is a lot easier than others. And then when we're talking, subtle changes, which you guys will be tackling when you're looking at, exercise, diet, stress, that sort of thing. And then there's like really big time change. People who have chemical dependency disorders or smoking or eating or other significant things. Why can't they stop these really awful habits that are just leading to bad health? Is there underlying issues to that? That's kind of hint at that this week, and then next week we'll really get into that with the ACE scores and all that. We need to know how and when positive change is possible. Sometimes it's just not possible. They're just not ready for that. We need to have proven tools to help our clients make the change they need. So we'll tackle a case that a student dealt with a few years back in field work. This client, we'll call him Joe, he was very obese. He was in the hospital, St. Joe's. And he was younger, but he pretty much was eating himself to death. And he was like totally debilitated, all alone, sitting at home all day on the computer, eating pizza, takeout food, just totally deteriorated. He smoked, he had diabetes, skin breakdown, heart disease, depression, history of sexual abuse. We're going to get into next week. It makes things a lot more difficult. And he had deficits in everything, mostly because he was just so big. Bathing, dressing, toileting, meal prep, functional mobility. He really had a hard time doing all these different things. But he did tell the OT and the OT student, and this was the OT student's patient, she was all his, I realized my health was awful. I would like to become healthier. So there was a glimmer of hope right there in that statement as he was admitted into the hospital. We'll look at 3 essential components of positive change. These are kind of the doorway that leads to changing habits, routines, making yourself different, better in every way you want. The first thing is this idea, are they ready to change? Looking at Prochaska's levels of change. This is quite famous, these levels of change, something you may see again on the board exam. Definitely a big underlying principle of change. You have to figure out what level they're at before we even start thinking about how you're going to help them change. And then if you think they're ready to change, how do you go about that? Willpower is kind of a huge part of that. We'll kind of look at willpower, how it can be strengthened, some big research around that. The power of habit. Habits really drive change. Everything we do is habit, conscious and unconscious habit. You really have to kind of work within those habits to get somebody to really change and get that long-lasting change. Okay, let's look at these levels of change first. This is a big deal. A lot of questions on the midterm. Not a lot, but there are a few questions on the midterm around these levels of change. So you want to really know these well in this class today. If you come out with nothing else today, know the level of changes. Individuals at different levels of change have different needs and benefit from different kinds of strategies or interventions. You need to gear your interventions to the level that they're at. Just when it comes to big change, It's really a process, not an event. Individuals can cycle through stages of change repeatedly. It can be a circular kind of process. Give you an example. When I was a student, and believe it or not, when I was a student, Chris was my supervisor, as was Kim. Kim was my immediate supervisor. I was at Acadia. They were both there. They were both OT supervisors working at Acadia. Of course, this was like 1880s, but it was a while ago. So yeah, Kim was my CI, and I still kind of have nightmares about that. It wasn't that bad. So she was my CI. I had this client. I forget my first client, and they stuck me in the chemical dependency unit. I didn't know anything about drug addiction at all, and here I am thrown in this chemical dependency unit, and like, here you go, dealing with drug addicts. So my first patient was a pharmacist, young professional pharmacist guy. So you go in, you do your vow, and talk to him, and he says right off the bat, I have a drug addiction problem, but I'm not here to stop. He had a family and kids, this guy. He was a working pharmacist. He says, I'm not here to stop. I'm just here to get more of a degree of control. He, like I experienced a lot of the people in that setting, was obviously not ready to change. Even those that were ready to change, it was almost like a revolving door kind of thing. Call them, kind of an awful term, frequent flyers. They would come back again and again. And I asked Chris this one, just like, what are we doing here? Are we making a difference? We seem to get them dried out or whatever and send them home. And then they just come back again. Just, well, it's a big change. It can take, in some cases, a lifetime to deal with the drug addiction, chemical dependency unit. It's that overwhelming and powerful. A lot of people do, and it's a lot of great success stories. But it's a big, big challenge, and it can be a circular process in terms of relapse and kind of trying to move forward eventually. Here's kind of that, gives you an idea of the circular process. These are the different stages. We'll break these down individually. We can kind of cycle through these different parts, relapsing, that sort of thing. Pre-contemplation, no intention of changing their behavior. So the pharmacist said he did not want to stop taking drugs. I always wondered, like, where did he get his drugs, and, try to avoid the pharmacy that he actually worked at. Anyway, so he was pre-contemplation, no intention of changing his behavior. Then he was contemplating, aware a problem exists, but with no commitment to action. And then you're preparing. You kind of decided, you're preparing, trying to take on action. You get a plan together, and then you're going for it. As you're going forward, you have to modify things because life happens around stuff. Maintaining it, sustain change, do behaviors, basic goals, and then possibly relapse. Hopefully not, but possibly relapse. You start circling through again. And you're going to go in circling until you eventually get to that point where you have that lasting change that you're looking for. Okay, here's the first stage, pre-contemplation. So you're not ready to make change and you have no plans to change. This is the pharmacist. This is this cat. Right here. See this cat? If you look at the size of this beer, it's about half his body. And he, just from the look on his face, you can tell he has no intention of change. He's like, I know I have a drinking problem. I don't really care. Life is stressful. The dog is killing me. I'm really trying hard to train my human parents. So life is stressful. I need my drink every day. So he has no intention of changing. You're just kind of batting your head against the wall. You're not going to change this guy. Person is usually minimizing and rationalizing problems. Moralizing, lecturing, and advice giving does not work. You can try to make them, motivate them, or try to start to turn them in the right direction by increasing awareness. You are falling over. You talk to the cat. You were drinking so much this week. I noticed that you kept falling over outside when you were trying to chase that bird. You were so drunk you just couldn't run very well and grab the bird. Did that affect your behavior, your life? And the cat will go, well, yeah. You're trying to get them to just become a little more aware. You can ask them to consider how the problem impacts his or her physical or social situation, long-term over short-term. Okay, and then we're kind of moving on from the cat and the pharmacist, starting to think about it. I guess it is a problem. I can't get the birds like I used to before I started drinking so much. So kind of a dawning awareness of a need to change. They're starting to consider how to change. There's ambivalence, anticipation, and some doubt. Yeah, I need to change, but I'm not sure I want to give up all the beer. You can help them develop and use self-monitoring tools, facilitate awareness, and help them through this stage if you think they're there. Help them visualize positive change, what it would look like, if you do change, how you could run better, grab the birds, that really go after that dog when it gets on their nerves, things like that. You can help them discuss the impact of the problem on their lives, previous efforts. Have you ever tried to stop drinking before? How did that go? How long did you last? What were the barriers? What were the habits? What are your habits? And get into these strategies that we're going to talk about. So they've thought about it and have to decide, okay, I'm going to stop drinking. Help them establish goals. Coming up with a plan, small steps, time limits, considering those habits, routines, rewards, consider contracts, if-then consequences. We'll talk all about what this stuff means, distraction strategies, establishing like a support system, support groups, coping information, reminders, all these things. Taking action. You got your plan together and you're going for it. Focusing on the benefits, small rewards along the way, those goals. The environment and relationships can be a huge deal. It's the academy. You have like cat drinking buddies. Stay away from those drinking buddies. Stay away from, bar. What bar would be a good bar that people go to? Can't think of that bar. But just think of a bar that they always go to. You got to avoid that bar. Encourage positive support systems. Empathy on the part of the therapist is important. Planning for setbacks and contingency plans. Life happens. You're going to run into problems. You've got to be prepared for those kinds of problems. That's kind of the maintenance comes in. Keep positive enforcement. Strategies to reduce boredom. Limit comparison with others that seem to make it so easy. Limited self-talk. This is kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, but don't beat yourself up and talking about stuff. Relapse, plan for road bumps. Sometimes you do get relapses, kind of one step forward, back, 2 steps back. Trying to keep going forward. Again, it's not necessarily a straight line. It can be circling, but hopefully you keep moving in the right direction. One lapse is not a relapse. Working through each stage one at a time. Big change can really be challenging and take a long time. You have these different stages of change model. Gives you some quick definition and potential strategies. They're pre-contemplation, increasing awareness. Contemplation, motivate, encourage, making specific plans. Preparation, assist with developing and implementing concrete action plans. You're putting your plan together at this point. Help set individual goals. Action, help them with feedback, problem solving, as they run into problems, supports, reinforcement, maintaining, assist with coping, reminders, finding alternatives, avoiding slips, relapses. This is a quick thing, helps you kind of figure out where they're at. It's a quick, simple questionnaire. If you can just take this with you, if nothing else, when you're out there trying to assess whether somebody's ready to change or not. Do you plan to change? You ask them that. No. This is the pharmacist. I do not intend to change the next 6 months. Pre-contemplation. No, but I intend to change probably in the next 6 months. Thinking about it. Are you ready to change? No, not right now, but I intend to in the next 30 days. Prep stage. Putting the plan together. Will we come into action here? Yes, I plan to change, and I've been for at least 6 months. I'm in the action stage. I'm doing it. Yes, I've been doing it for more than 6 months. This is really maintenance. It really can be as challenging as the other stages. Here's another example, smoking. Are you interested in quitting smoking? No, pre-contemplation. Are you thinking about quitting smoking? Yes, contemplation. Are you ready to plan how to quit smoking? Yes, let's put a plan together, preparation. Are you in the process of trying to quit? Action, decision-making. Are you trying to stay smoke-free? Yes, maintaining. Okay, so let's go back to Joe. He was a mess at home, living at home alone, living on Netflix, and live streaming and League of Legends and pizza. He's just total mess, totally dependent on care. Goes to the hospital. OT walks in, looks at the chart that we looked at. Joe, are you ready to change? And he says, yes, I think I am ready to change. He's kind of thinking about it. He's kind of, what did he say exactly? Okay, going to say, sorry. He said, I realize my health is awful. I would like to become healthier. So he's thinking about it. He's contemplating. I don't think he has a plan yet, but he's like the ideal client. He's contemplating, he's thinking about it, realizes it's really destroying his health. This is where you can come in, enforce, support, help Joe make a plan. This is what the OT did. We'll see what happened with that plan in a minute here. We're just going to jump into all these different strategies. How do we facilitate that change? We're getting into the particulars kind of thing. The biggest thing for change, obviously, is this idea of willpower. Do you have enough willpower to change? Some people have a lot of willpower, some people not as much willpower. This is kind of like your genetic or whatever. This is what you've got to work with. Doesn't mean you can't change, just means you may have extra challenges. A lot of that comes down to this idea of delayed gratification. A lot of people with mental health issues, mental health diagnoses, ADHD, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, a lot of times at the root of it is a difficulty with delayed gratification. They're very spontaneous. They really have a hard time kind of holding themselves back. Impulsive. So they did a study. This kind of really articulates, clearly see what I'm talking about with willpower, this idea of delayed gratification. So you probably heard about this, a tremendously landmark kind of study. They asked these children, 4-year-olds, gave them a marshmallow. You eat it now or wait and you can get another one. Can you wait? I'll come back and you'll have 2 marshmallows, or you can eat the marshmallow now. Approximately 30% of the students, the children, avoided the urge. Only 30%, so that's only 3 out of 10. Those 3 out of those 10, they followed them through their whole lives. Dramatically so, these children had higher SAT scores. They had more education, more popular with peers, less drug taking, more activity in the frontal lobe of the brain on MRI. This delayed gratification is executive processing, frontal lobe. So, just thinking about this, frontal lobe, front part of your brain, what do you think gets really whacked when you get in a car accident? You get a head injury. When you're playing football, it's a head-on collision. Boom. It's the front part of your brain. What is very characteristic of individuals with head injuries, you see them when you go into rotations, maybe you've seen this, they are very impulsive. They have no delayed gratification. In a lot of cases, they have no inhibitions at all. Frontal lobe, huge deal here. Higher activity with these children that had delayed gratification. Had comparatively reduced, less unhealthy weight, better able to reach personal goals, strong relationships, just these dramatic, overpowering kind of indicators of health, all because of better willpower. They repeated this study, different cohorts. It was virtually just all these white, middle-class kids, then it was lower socioeconomic individuals, minorities, whole thing. It always played out the same. Those children with delayed gratification did better later in life. And again, just a side note, I suspect everybody in this room did well in the marshmallow test. You probably think yourself, I'm not sure I'd hold out. That's why you're here, for the most part. We're talking about people that are kind of struggling with all this. But the good news with this, especially for us as OTs, is there were a lot of outliers. Those that went against the trend. They sucked down that marshmallow the first chance they got, but they still had a very successful life, did a lot of good things. So it's not really nature versus nurture kind of thing, but it's kind of both combined. Genetics and DNA do influence temperament behavior, but the environment also influences DNA and personality. This is where we come in. It's just definitely their environment where they grow up, in terms of how healthy that was, but in terms of strategies, stimulations, interventions that we can do that can facilitate this frontal lobe thinking, delayed gratification, success. A connection has been found between childhood stress and willpower. As a child, if you were under a lot of stress, we're going to really look into this next week in terms of abuse, social, verbal, physical abuse, or other kinds of issues that we'll look at. It affects your brain, affects the frontal lobe, affects your willpower. If you experience severe stress or trauma as a child, you are more likely to be impulsive. Genetic connection between the environment and the health of these children and long life kind of thing. What about the outliers? The ones who overcame genetics and the environment. And this is definitely possible. And this is great news. We're not pre-hardwired. Neuroplasticity. Remember that? The brain is not like a radio or car. It changes. You can make it change. It changes when you're young, and it can change. That's more challenging, but it can change as you get older. So the things we do as an OT can drive that neuroplasticity, change their brain, change their behavior, change their life, really. So it's possible. We should also suggest changes the frontal lobe activity, the location of willpower in the brain can improve as a result of training. What's an example of this? A great example of this is Sesame Street. It's a lot of those things we need to look at to help with willpower, which is a big driver of quality of life. Research also suggests we can overcome genetics through education and parenting. So how do we do this? What are these tools that you kind of use without even knowing you're really using them, or you need to teach children or even adults to deal with the problem, the chemical addiction or whatever it is that's the big problem. Or in our cases, maybe it's not getting to the gym as much as we want, or not studying as much as we want, or avoiding those foods or too much drink, and whatever it is, less kind of, what do I want to say, pathological kind of a way. One way is kind of distraction. What did we learn from the children who resisted the urge? And go back to that study, they used distraction. You saw it in the videos. The successful children distract themselves through singing, playing, thinking of marshmallow as a stinky fish, covering the marshmallow up, emotional distancing. Sesame Street does this with the Cookie Monster. With the cookies, you need to avoid the cookies, distract yourself, because you can't think of the cookies. You can't eat cookies all day long. You got to stop thinking about the cookies, think about something else. This is how you can overcome your immediate emotions. So in this picture here, this cookie is sleeping, and I think this is like his nightmare. It's like his expression, like and here's the Cookie Monster coming, of course, to eat him. Here's another one. It's a little more involved. It's called if-then binding, contract kind of stuff. OTs use this with really difficult clients. With Joe, I think at some points they were actually using this, thinking about using this. I've used this with clients. It can be very helpful, just with clients, with younger clients with mental health issues. It can be a good thing. You can use if-then binding contract to increase willpower. If you give in to a particular hot emotional response, eating the cookie, whatever it is, or a trigger to temptation, you can counter it with X. Consequences, a behavioral thing. For our if-then binding contract to work, it needs to be binding and you need to make it cost greater than the benefit. For example, every time I smoke a cigarette, I will donate $100 to a cause I hate. Here's a story that shows you how the binding has to be the right kind of cost to the person. True story, the psychologist made a New Year's vow, I'm going to stop smoking, and I'm going to do that by not buying any more cigarettes. I don't buy cigarettes, I won't spend the money on them, and I won't smoke them. The contract was not binding. There was no significant cost to him. What did he end up doing, as you would think? He started borrowing cigarettes off of friends, finding cigarette butts in the streets, and then something happened one day. This is just the next strategy. He did not change until he saw himself fighting with a homeless man over a cigarette butt. There was a butt on the sidewalk. He looked at it at the same time as the homeless guy looked at it, and then they dove for it, wrestling for the cigarette butt. And then he had this like, oh my God, I've got a serious problem. Didn't know his awareness was an addiction until it reached a certain threshold. When he saw himself fighting for a cigarette butt, that did it. Boom, he stopped smoking cigarettes. Leads to this next strategy. Obviously, if you want to change to be successful, you need to want it. This can be facilitated through increased awareness that you've got a serious problem here, buddy. Brain thinks of short-term over long-term. You need to reverse. Think long-term benefits versus short-term gain. You need to cool the heat. Your body's like, I really want that cigarette. The moment of the heat of the long-term consequences. My lungs, I've had it. I'm going to get lung cancer. I'm going to die at 55. I got to stop smoking cigarettes, kind of thing. Here's a good example of how effective this can be in the right kind of person, right kind of scenario. Awareness can be a very powerful tool for change. A large National Institute of Health study, this is top of the line, on dieting. Everybody thinks about dieting. They don't want to eat, terrible foods. How do you diet? Found food journaling. I think Weight Watchers still uses this to be the most effective long-term tool for maintaining weight loss. Participants become more aware of their eating habits. Here's a couple other examples. My wife is a dietitian. She worked with clients around diet. She would have them in a see-through plastic bag and put in this bag during the day all the things you eat in between meals. The chips, the cookies, all those lovely drinks everybody loves in the morning that are like worthy of 6 hot dogs in calories that you're sucking down every morning to get yourself going. And then she'd say, okay, let's just look at all these in-between things. It's total up the calories here. And it's like, whoa, what do you think of that kind of thing? Something I did when I was trying to study more, frequently study, to tell this story again, we're going back into the 18th century or so, but I was very much a C student as an undergrad, for most of my undergrad, and then towards the end of my undergraduate education, took me like 7 years to graduate, so I was like, dropped out, went back in, so I had to like bumpy roads. Anyway, towards the end, I decided, I'm getting old, I gotta take this seriously and do something with my life. I need to really study hard. So I said, I'm gonna figure out how to study. So what I did is I had this little black book and I wrote in the hours that I really studied each week versus what I told myself I studied each week. And I recorded it, and then I saw that I wasn't really studying much, and I set a goal. Okay, I want to study 30 hours this week. So I need to do 5 hours a day, whatever it was. And I wrote it down there very honestly, very brutally. Increased my awareness of how little I was studying, and it kind of was worked as a goal setting to really get me where I wanted to go. Anyway, bottom line, I went from C to an E student just because I put more time into it, more effort into it. Was more focused, was more ready to change, had that awareness, growing awareness that life is coming at me. I can't, work at McDonald's or whatever the rest of my life, so I need to get a real job, that sort of thing. Okay, so another way routines can also be a powerful tool, another huge way for change, along with increased awareness and distraction, is routine, the habits. Routines and habits are the unconscious pattern that can run our lives. They do not require memory or active thinking from the frontal lobe. Example of the morning drive to work. You do these routine things. You do it like for 25 days or so, and you brush your teeth. So you're aware of your brushing teeth, but you're not really aware of your brushing teeth. You just get up in the morning and you're like a zombie. You walk into the bathroom, you take your shower, you come out of the shower, you put deodorant, after having breakfast, and then you brush your teeth. And sometimes you don't even aware that you did brush your teeth, but you just do it. It's just part of a routine. It's become unconscious. It's a part of it, and that's usually the best way to get with a habit. So you don't have to think about something like this big barrier. I just brush my teeth every day. It's just what I do. Another example, driving to work. When I drive to work every day, I take the same route every time. So I do it without thinking. I think about other things. I think about what I'm going to be talking about, whatever it is. So when my son was in high school, I used to take him to school one day a week. It's like a Friday, I think. So that was the day we had to go a different route to school. Can't tell you how many times I would start going to work, and I would go past the point where I needed to turn to go to his high school. He went to John Baptist High School, and my son would say, "Dad, you're driving the wrong way again." And I would have to turn and turn because it was automatic. It's like automatic. This is like a chunking process within the basal ganglia of the brain. You're not conscious of it. It takes like 20 to 30 days, and it becomes really hard to change. And it kind of unfolds automatically unless you fight it. This can be a really good thing for us as therapists. It's kind of leap ahead to the real world again. When you deal with clients with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, they can't think of new things, and they can't really do a lot of these things, but they can do what they've always done. Let's deep in that basal ganglia. A lot of times that part of that routine, as we talked about, is your morning ADL routine. You can build on that ADL routine of bathing and dressing and all that sort of stuff. If you get it as close to what they used to do, get it as routine as you possibly can, there's potential for positive change and improvement with these folks, even though a lot of the brain frontal lobe is deteriorated. And then within these habits, there's usually a trigger, like a reward kind of thing. A lot of the habits we do, we become unconscious of them over time. It's like a neurological, physiological craving or emotional reward usually drives the cue, the habit. You kind of think of the routine. Usually it's the cue. It's kind of backwards. The routine is something cues you, and you get that reward, whatever it is, and it just reinforces the habit. Smoking every night after supper. Why supper? Supper, you get that physiological response. You're sated. You feel full. And then you're like, oh, I feel full. Cigarette would be great right now. And you smoke the cigarette. Maybe you socialize. You smoke and you talk and you have these great discussions. All part of that loop. The food, the supper is the cue. And then the food and the socializing is kind of the reward. It's kind of reinforcing itself. Drinking alcohol. You go to the, I can't think of that restaurant. Sea Dog. You go to the Sea Dog at night with your friends, and you have this routine every Friday night after classes. Week is done. I survived another week of just listening to these professors blab on and on. You go to the Sea Dog, and you drink alcohol with friends. It's like the friends' routine is after Friday nights, 7 o'clock after supper. The reward is finishing the week of school. The reward is drinking, socializing, making fun of your professors, things like that. Snacking every afternoon while you study. You may do this one. I run into this one all the time when I'm trying to do something intensely. I want to crunch something in my teeth or drink a hot caffeinated beverage. So connected to that routine of studying is the cueing. Studying, you study usually after supper. That's the kind of routine. And then your reward is the food, the caffeine, reinforces the routine. High calorie drink, we talk about those every morning before school. Gotta get to Dunkin' Donuts, get my drink, or I'm just not gonna make it through all these crazy classes today. So that's part of the loop. Another example of that is brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth did not become a habit until they just devised a more sophisticated, more powerful reward system. They, Pepsi and all these big companies that make $1 zillion all off of selling toothpaste. They used to just educate people. It says, all these cavities, don't you hate going to the dentist? It's so painful, expensive. Brush your teeth and you will not get cavities, and it's great. But it didn't work. People still didn't brush their teeth. So they said, okay, we got to up the stakes here. Get that physiological thing going. Let's put that stuff in there. I can't remember what it is. It's a chemical. Anyway, they put it in there and it makes you tingle. It's like, oh, I feel so clean now. My teeth feel white and clean. I feel great that I brushed my teeth. It's a good thing. And then toothbrushing took off, and everyone started brushing their teeth, and they made all kinds of money. And it was because they knew about this routine thing. Needed to increase the reward. Education awareness was not enough. Up the stakes, give them that physiological response, so they know, okay, I've done the job. My teeth are clean. my mouth is clean, life is good. I'm a Pepsodent toothpaste. How do you change these things? Golden Arches, McDonald's, they have a great one with, you drive home, let's say you're a parent, you got kids, you've worked all day, you're just like, oh my God, I can't go home and make supper. You drive by McDonald's, sometimes you even smell, it's the summer, maybe your window's down, you smell the cooked beef, all that grease and fat and French fries and salt. And it hits you and you go, oh my God, we've got to do McDonald's tonight. So it becomes routine. Every Friday night, it's not the end of the week, everybody goes out to eat on Friday night, we're going to get McDonald's, so it's hard work, stress, and then reward of the comfort food. Or sometimes it's alcohol on the weekends or whatever. So what you need to do is replace the reward and keep the routine. Every Friday night, you have to avoid McDonald's and try to put something else in there and make it positive somehow. Some examples of that. We suggest that new positive routines work better with a built-in reward system. So let's say you're trying to exercise, and you use the exercise, you get yourself to the gym and you reward yourself by coming home and having a beer or an alcoholic beverage or binging on chips or something like that. So you did good with the exercise, but now you're like tanking with all those chips. So what can you replace? Just replace, everything's the same. I'm going to the gym after supper, I'm really good at that. Coming home, the reward's not chips, it's guilt-free Netflix binging, maybe guilt-free social media binging, drinking alcohol in terms of the emotional release you get from alcohol, numbs all your problems. Do that through confession and AA meeting. It's part of that theory behind Alcoholics Anonymous, which is very effective for a lot of people. You go there and you connect and you dump all your problems out and feel the sense of camaraderie and you get this kind of emotional connection. That's the routine. That's the reward now versus the sea dog and alcohol. Meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, all this stuff we're going to be doing, reduce your emotional stress, all these potential good things you can put in there that, still work, for you. I'll give you an example of that. Let's go on to Keystone Habits. A lot of times there's certain habits that if you change them, it's like a multiplier kind of effect. It kind of like multiple change kind of thing. So you need to change that key habit and you kind of change all your other habits. We found that exercise is one. If you can start to exercise more, don't necessarily have to go to the gym. You can exercise in your apartment, especially when it's cold and all that sort of stuff. It spills over. Something like that makes other habits easier. Something to kind of tap into yourself and your clients. And then overcoming those barriers can be a huge challenge. What do I mean by barriers? For example, I usually develop a lot of good routines over the summer. And through the spring semester, because I'm not teaching as much, exercising more, meditating, doing all these great things. And then once I get back in the fall, and the barrier usually is overwhelming coursework, 7 days a week kind of, mentality that you guys very much know about. Everything goes out the window and all my good habits disappear. So you're kind of thinking ahead. How can you come up with a strategy to deal with these barriers, these things that are going to happen? Life happens, you need to kind of prepare for it. The more you can prepare for it, the more you can have a plan, the more likely you'll be successful. The study around total knee replacements may be helpful in that sense. Pain can throw them off when they're trying to do exercise. Pain and exercise is a huge deal with a total knee replacement. If you're not working that knee, stretching it, putting yourself through that pain, you can end up, with contracture in your knee, kind of a limp the rest of your life, and all kinds of issues around gait deformities. Don't want that. So they ask patients to write an interruption plan. Come up with a plan and go over what you have in addition to the therapist goals. Find the patients that, whether with personal written plan, got better at twice the rate of those compared with no plan. So if you have a plan to deal with the challenges, in this case pain, you're more likely to be successful. Patient goals are focused on two things: how they would deal with a specific moment of pain, personal rewards for enduring the pain of the prescribed exercises. And they found, again, those that had a plan They rewarded themselves with something, a beverage, a show, going out to eat really worked well, versus those that did kind of have to blame. All right, let's go back to Joe. Joe was the obese guy in the hospital that the overwhelmed, freaked out OT student was trying to figure out what to do. And then she found out she was very, very successful by setting up routines and structures for Joe. Every morning, 8 a.m., we're going to come in and we're going to get you dressed. We're going to exercise you. You're going to get your regular doses of insulin to control the blood sugar, regular meals, which is a huge deal with insulin, as you know, skilled OT for bathing, dressing, regular PT strengthening. The rewards for him, for Joe, was the socializing. He lived alone as kind of a hermit. He was a very social man. He loved talking to the OTs. He loved their positive reinforcement. Joe, you're doing great. You're losing weight. And he got better and better and better. And he met all of his goals. Did really, really well. And then kind of what happened, kind of the rest of the story, which isn't as positive, is he went home again. And within weeks to months, he fell apart again. With him, without that structure, without that routine, without that positive reinforcement, without that socialization, you could not cope. You cannot really survive. In this case, he really needed it. He needed to be living someplace where he could get these sorts of things that he needed because of all his issues, especially with his history that we'll talk about. That can be so damaging and so difficult to overcome. That was kind of his deal.